Production funding for Making It Up North is provided by the citizens of Minnesota through the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and by the Lloyd K. Johnson Foundation.
Craft kind of pushes us to think more generally and to understand how things are made.
People are excited about learning about craft and working with their hands. It's a nice outlet for a very screen-heavy society.
I'm a social introvert, and to spend too many hours in the studio alone is crazy making for me, so I really wanted to share a studio space.
It's been a lot of fun having those conversations about using what you make.
Something that was made with somebody's hands right here has a lot to say about who we are and why we're doing what we're doing.
I think like big rowboats like this are great. Having such a big boat that people can go in together, I think is really awesome to me. In my childhood, my boating experiences have sort of led me to be interested in building boats. And I'd like to build more bigger rowboats to like go on adventures with. The boat that I'm working on right now is pretty different than this boat, but I think this boat represents some projects that I would like to work towards. I really think, to me, what I want to do is build a really useful boat that is really unique and has a lot of character. You know, this is a totally made up boat in a way. I wanted to make it bright and showy just because I did not want to be held to any convention. I'm Josh Tolkien and I'm a boat builder, and I work in Betsy Bowen's church, which is a funny place for a boat builder to build a boat. So this is the trouble of like building a boat in this kind of environment, is I'm like trying to look at it. It's hard to figure out the right, again, perspective on the squareness and the evenness of the shape. But I think this is good.
I've been inspired by him taking a craft that typically wouldn't fit in like a 20 by 20 foot space and just going for it.
Well, it's clear from the moment you meet Josh's enthusiasm for boat building and for sharing that with others. And he came to us saying, you know, I've been to boat building school and learned these technical aspects of the trade. How do I create this as a profession for myself? And what would that mean to be an entrepreneur and start my own business?
You know, I think I wouldn't have considered coming to this program if it wasn't at least 2 years. And I think that like that kind of time to invest in myself was really attractive. The stitching for this has been a two-part process. The first was just sort of a running seam to sort of pull together the fabric, like it's one giant piece of ballistic nylon canvas that was just seamed together down the middle of the boat. And now I'm really just dressing up the seam by sewing this welting in. Sort of reason for me to do this project was I was interested in building the inside of this boat, and now I'm sort of figuring out how to do the outside of the boat, which is not necessarily in my wheelhouse, but it's always good to just kind of teach yourself new things too. It's interesting to me that like, I don't know, you know, the Aleutian native people who built these boats came up with this design, and I like to think that they like kind of knew enough about like naval architecture to, you know, think it was a good idea. So I don't know. The traditional bidarkers were all made out of like really like roots and really skinny willow and pieces of wood that bent really easily and naturally, and there's a lot more framing. And I wanted to build something that was like lightweight, didn't have as many pieces, so it's sort of my own, you know, my own methodology for putting this boat together, which has been fun. It's been really great because it allows me to be creative, and that's what I like to do.
One of the realms of this program is giving people the time and mentorship and support to really explore those questions for themselves of, I know that this is what I want to spend my life doing. How do I have the space and time to take a breath and figure out what that's going to be? My name is Sarah Waddle, and I'm a program manager with North House Folk School. And one of the programs that I work with is the Artisan Development Program, which is housed here in the studio.
It's beautiful. Why wouldn't you want to use it? You know, it's meant to be used, and hopefully the beauty in it inspires somebody to use it instead of want to look at it. So this is referred to as broom corn, but it actually comes from the sorghum plant. And there's a lot of different methods for making a broom, and this is one that I was first attracted to about 5 years ago when I first learned how to make brooms. I'm Mary Beth Garmo, and I'm a broom maker and a woodworker. I live in Grand Marais, Minnesota. I love going out in the woods and harvesting the handles. I mean, my perspective on being in the forest has totally changed. Even if I'm just out to enjoy the day, you know, I don't bring a saw or anything, and it's just like, oh, that would make a beautiful broom. Oh my gosh, look at that one. Oh, what if that handle was, and I mean, it's just, my mind is kind of always there.
Through the process of making the goods and things that we need to live our lives, we're just getting that much closer to the things around us and appreciating them, understanding them, taking care of them, and passing that along.
So this is to weave, it's kind of a decorative cap that goes over where I've attached all the broom corn to the broom, and this is the stem of the broom corn plant. I was living and working in a one-room cabin, so it was like half workshop, half life, and clean up so that I could have my evening, and it was very isolating. So it's been nice to share some space and to have other people making noise and creating and inspiring.
Her brooms are incredible. She's a really diligent craftsperson.
It's just the tension on the strings that this last string goes under that's holding everything together.
She's very attentive to detail and to incorporating tradition into her craft, and also exploring her own voice in what she's making.
It's definitely allowed me to explore some more creativity in what I've been making, and it was not a hard decision to stay here for the program.
Well, it's been really fun to see what she's come up with. She finds a project and then kind of breaks it down and makes these really great production items, and that's a real skill of hers, and it's really fun to see what the types of items that she's come up with.
I get a lot of people who will like stop by while I'm demonstrating or something, and they're like, oh, it's a dying craft. I'm like, no, it's alive, it's coming back, it's becoming more and more vibrant, and people are just doing fun and amazing stuff with it and keeping them just totally relevant in this world, adding fun colors and doing playful things with handles, and yeah, just keeping people excited about something that is considered so mundane of an item. I live a pretty modest lifestyle and harvest a lot of what I eat and don't buy new clothes and that kind of thing, so I don't need a lot, and it's been So far it's been realistic for me to be able to make brooms, sell brooms, and then teach.
You know, we have this amazingly sort of fertile ground of craft here, and how can we create that next bridge between somebody saying, all right, I'm in, I want to pursue craft in my life, to saying, okay, I'm an established craftsperson, I can teach for you, I can teach for other folk schools, I can sell my work successfully. And we also see them as kind of ambassadors of the folk school. They share the message of what we're here and what we're doing when they're out and about in the world, traveling and working on developing their own craft. They're also sharing about North House.
It's almost like being in some sort of crafty grad school in a way. I was trying to imagine other ways in which I could commit this amount of time to have the freedom to try things that aren't necessarily profitable economically, that just need to incubate and need to be part of like getting to the next step. To me, that was my motivation for committing for 2 years. Yeah, my name is Mike Loeffler. I am a woodworker. I do chair making, I do bowl carving, I do some timber framing. I got interested in woodworking pretty much because I enjoy trees and I like being in the woods, and so that was the inspiration. It's a good sound, isn't it? I think one of the nice parts is your full body is kind of connected to this process, which is a different kind of experience than running it through a bandsaw or something else like that.
Mike has an interesting array of crafts that he's interested in, both carving small objects and working on big shelters and buildings, timber framing. And I think he posed an interesting question to us in applying to the program too, of what are the different sort of legs of a life that make it possible to live your life as a craftsperson and explore what it might mean to have sort of a seasonal lifestyle of building buildings in the warmer months and doing smaller carvings in the colder months. And what do I want to take from bits and pieces of the people that I'm mentored by and create my own path forward?
I actually was an intern at North House in 2011 and sort of got addicted to all this stuff. I started carving, so my last name is Loeffler and it means spoon maker in German. And when I found that out, I thought I should figure out how to carve spoons. It's one project kind of leads to the next, to the next, to the next. And that kind of happened with me. It started with something small and repeatable like a spoon. And then really these bird bowls are just big spoons with a little more detail on them.
Just taking it in fun and new, unique directions, like making a flamingo bowl. You know, who would have thunk?
You start introducing new tools to your kit, and then all of a sudden you're like, I could also try this project. And so they just kind of grew in scale, and I love that about it. Yeah, and with most of these, I don't bother to make them perfect because I don't want them to be perfect.
Mike provides a great example of somebody who's making things that are really looking back and looking forward, looking to the past for inspiration and standing on hundreds of years of people exploring form and function and how a chair or a bowl works in your hands and in your house, but also looking forward and seeing what do people today want to use in their daily lives.
What's really nice about doing this too, having a base layer that's another color and a sort of a contrasting color to the top coat, is that when you buff it out, this was only made with hand tools, so you can see all the facets. It's really a very, very textured surface. It's a really neat effect.
Mike's been super inspirational. He has so many cool ideas when it comes to use of color and using like patterns and motifs and ideas that I would never think of using.
You know, there are some things that are super ornate that are interesting because of how busy they are, but some things it's just, there's a sweet spot where they can be They can definitely go overboard, and sometimes just a little touch is really all it needs. I don't know if I have a style yet. I'm borrowing a lot from other people and kind of figuring out how the mechanics, sort of the chair architecture works, and then what a good seat feels like. And so I'm new to it. I think it'll develop. It'll show up. My specialty will show up in the future. Yeah.
I think all of our craftspeople are exploring what is that optimum mix of making things that you're selling, of teaching your craft, of sharing in other ways. Do you have another gig that's steady all the time and your craft comes and goes? What does that look like for different people?
It's wool and water. All you need is that, and patience and stamina. I don't know, having a sense of adventure, I think, because wool often doesn't follow your direction, and I really like that, the possibilities. If you're a first time, haven't felt the slippers before, it might be hard to see that this is the shape 2 feet. If you imagine that, this piece of plastic is the resistance side of the slipper. So I'm going to put a lot of wool over this and agitate it on the fibers. It transforms from something fluffy to something really durable. It's just the magic of this becomes something so strong. My name's Elise Kylo, and I'm a felting artist, using wool to make things of beauty and function. I want to create. I need color and choice and the unknown, experimentation, expression. It's getting heavier and heavier. I'm often guilty of too many materials, and each one affects the other, and then you don't know what you're going to get. But often it's a great surprise.
Elise is very passionate about felting and wool, and especially about sharing that craft with other people. And I think Elise is also particularly inspired by the ancientness of felting, that it's one of the very most original ways that fabric has been made, and keeping alive that memory of those traditions, but also exploring new modern directions and contexts for that craft are really cool ways that she's spending her time here.
A jacket behind me is like one of the first jackets I've made, and I have a long way to go just because it's kind of Neanderthal, really thick and heavy, but it's beautiful. But this is sort of moving towards something that's more flexible and wearable. So if you lived in the Arctic, this would be great. That is great. It's sculptable, it's paintable, it's practical, and it's also really whimsical.
Elise and I both, I think, are really into those sort of playful things, and so it's really fun to sort of see what she's working on and get inspired by it.
This is a scarf, and it's made with llama and wool and some yarn. It's super soft. This is called it's a Nuno scarf where there's silk and wool together. This is a piece, I did a show about lichens a year ago, and everything was wool and lichen related. And in the toy box are some things I carry along with me when I might do a demo or something. I had just moved to Grand Marais 5 years ago, and I'd been teaching felting for about 12 years, and still feel like I had a whole lot to learn. Like this treasure chest is really deep, and I'm just on the surface. And ADP was going to give me time to dig deeper and experiment and play without worry about the jobs. I do love this part, sort of not thinking about form or structure or purpose, but sort of just playing with color. I don't think I would felt there wasn't that part of it.
Okay. I'll try a skewer. I'll try a roasting fork.
After having these 2 years here, like learning, working with a mentor, traveling to Scandinavia, I mean, all these things have definitely combined to make me a different craftsperson.
I'm feeling pretty good about this.
This might work.
I know.
Everything changes your life that you do. I think, you know, like you're really a sum of all your experiences.
I would choose the path of making it over anything else.
For this to actually produce a long-term investment from people, I think people would need to make a living on their craft, and I think it's possible to do. Yeah.